Well, I now just talked about the National East, the National Central, and the National South, and now it's time to finish up the National Conference side by talking about the National West, which consists of the Los Angeles Angels, the Phoenix Storm, the Portland Dragons, the Honolulu Phantoms, and the Oakland Majors. So let's get this underway. So we start off with pretty much the opposite of the Jacksonville Bucks. Remember, the Bucks had a very incredible offense but a shitty defense. Well, the Oakland Majors have a shitty offense, but not a very good, but very solid defense. This team is really weird. They were really bad, but at the same time, they really beat a bunch of really good teams. It's actually incredible. So, first they started off 0-3 against teams that had winning records, all at home too, so that's pretty disappointing. But after the bye, they beat Los Angeles and gave them their last loss before they went on that 8-game win streak. But then they lost 3 in a row to get to 1-6. Then on Sunday night they went to Pittsburgh, who was 6-1. They're 1-6, and they actually walk out with the win. They beat them with a late field goal with like a few seconds left. That is incredible how they pull off that upset. Then they lost 2 in a row, but then they won 3 straight. Hosting Louisville, so of course they were shitty, so it's not surprising. But then they beat Phoenix at their place, and after the bye, they beat Atlanta at their place. So 2 wins against two teams with, one with a winning record, and the other one was at 500. And not only that, those 2 wins against Louisville and Phoenix, they went 29-0 in those games. They had 2 straight shutouts. I don't think that's ever happened in PFA history where back-to-back shutouts happen. Now you would think with that incredible momentum, with that 3-game win streak, they would have to maybe keep up and make themselves look good at the end of the year. Nope. They went on to lose the final 5 games to finish 5-13 and end up with the 6th overall pick in the upcoming draft. So anyways, in terms of stats, on offense, oh boy, this is how bad they were. They were dead last in scoring. They scored the least of any teams in PFA history at the moment. 14 points average a game, only scoring 252 points. That's so bad that considering the fact that NFL teams, like usually the worst offenses each year, usually score around that too, but they don't have 2 extra games like Oakland did to have inflation to make them look better. They had 2 extra games and they still only got 252 points. That is incredibly bad. They were 39th, dead last, second to dead last in yards. They were 17th on the ground, though, which is quite impressive, but dead last in passing, getting only 178 yards a game on the air. But then when you get to defense, 13th best in scoring. 13th best in scoring, allowing just under 19 points. They were 7th best in yards total. That's incredible. They were 29th against the run, so that's not really good. But 3rd against the pass, which is quite impressive, allowing just 192 yards a game. So that defense was pretty solid, except on the ground, but that offense historically inept. This team was so bad when it came to passing. They had 4 quarterbacks playing this year. 4 of them. Matter of fact, it was actually incorrect. It's 3 quarterbacks and one of their wide receivers, who all of them had to play because of injury. Their Joshua Crane, their receiver, threw 8 passes, completed only 4 of them, and threw an interception. So that's definitely not good. Their main starter for the year, Bill Berry, got only 2,000 yards. Barely completed 60% of his passes, 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And then his backup, Alfonso Canahan, he got only not even 55% completions, 3 touchdowns, 4 picks. And then he went down to injury, so they had to bring in fucking James Greer from the free agency. He completed just barely 55% of his passes, 1 touchdown and 3 picks in the final 2 games. Solid though on the ground though. Their running back John Schultz had almost 1,300 yards, but only 4 touchdowns. That's really bad. And right behind him, Howard Day had over 700 yards, but again, 4 touchdowns. So their running backs got a lot of yards, but not many points off of it. Although Crane wasn't good of a passer, he was definitely good for a receiver. Almost 70 receptions, getting almost 1,300 yards, and he got 8 touchdowns. So he had a pretty good season. And right behind him was John Quinn, who had over 700 yards, but for just 2 touchdowns. Their offensive line was solid. Their strong safety, Willis Little, had 113 tackles plus 4 sacks, so he had a good season for strong safety. And for as bad as this team was on defense, this team ties Denver and San Diego for the second most sacks this season. Just 1 sack short of the number 1 spot, which Pittsburgh has with 67. This team, despite going 5-13, had 66 sacks, and they had 13 players get a sack at once this year. Boyd Fernandez, their linebacker, had 15 of them. Their defensive tackle, Casey Kirk, had 12 of them. Their linebacker, Paul Lohr, had 12 tackles. David Smith, the defensive end, had 10 sacks. So 4 players with 10 plus sacks, including one of them with 15. But then when you get to interceptions, this team is terrible. They had, I think it was like 12 interceptions in total, and it's a tie between their free safety Leslie Walton and their cornerback Emil Cordell with just 3 interceptions. So this team got a lot of sacks, but not a lot of interceptions. That's quite impressive considering the fact that if you get a lot of sacks, you should force the quarterback to throw a lot of turnovers. But that didn't happen this year for them. So the highlights, of course, that very good defense, second most in sacks, and those wins were very impressive. I think, like I said earlier, I think they're the only team to have 2 straight shutouts. I don't think it's ever happened yet. And all their wins but one of them came from teams with winning records or were at 500. Their only team they beat with a losing record was the Louisville Saints. But of course, the bad news is they went 5-13. They have the 6th overall pick in the draft, and that offense was the worst in PFA history at the moment. Jesus, just 14 points a game. That's just terrible. Now, of course, what can they do in the draft? Well, one, they gotta get a QB since they went through 4 QBs this year. That's really bad. They got to get more help at receiving core. They need to fix that offensive line, and they need to get better secondary to force more interceptions. And, of course, with that really good defense, even if they just fix the offense a little bit, this team could be in a contender for a playoff spot in 2017. Then we get to the Honolulu Phantoms, or as they're now called, the Hawaii Phantoms, but this is a recap of last year, so we're still going to call them Honolulu, and probably the last few times I'm going to call them that. Well, they started off the year 4-1, with that only blemish being that absolute debacle they had at Omaha on Monday night. But after that 4-1 start, they collapsed to 5-7. But then they turned it around to go 4-2 the rest of the way to finish 9-9. So a pretty good season for them. On offense, they were the 13th highest score in offense. That's pretty surprising considering the fact that they were 23rd in yards, 25th on the ground, and 20th in the air. So they were actually around average, but their points show like way more better than that. So it's just a little strange how that happened. But then on defense, they were 33rd in scoring, so that's not good. 28th in yards, definitely not good. They had the worst rush-off defense in the league, allowing almost 153 yards a game on the ground. But then they had the 9th best passing defense too, which is quite impressive. But then again, they're in a division that does not have really good passes, so I guess it's not too surprising. Their quarterback, Richard Clough, had almost 63% completion percentage, threw in for almost 4,000 yards, 29 touchdowns to 12 picks, so he had a pretty good year. Their running back, Kevin Moser, had over 1,000 receiving yards, and he got 9 touchdowns, so he had a pretty good year. With right behind him, Matthew Coward having almost 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, so their running game was pretty productive. Wide receiver Eric Fay had over 1,600 yards and 14 touchdowns. He had an incredible year. And right behind him, Palmer Negron had over 1,000 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Their offensive line has 2 incredible studs with one of their guards, Hugh Houston, and of course they have probably one of the best tackles in the game, Joseph Jordan, who had over 56 pancakes and just allowed 1 sack. That is absolutely incredible. Then we get to the defense end. Oh, jeez, God, you're not going to believe this. Their linebacker, Wilson Sharp, has over 228 tackles. This guy has 228 tackles. I've never seen in NFL history, for crying out loud, someone getting over 200 tackles, and this guy did it. Probably the best linebacker in the league, plus with 3 sacks, too. He's the only one with 100, let alone 200 tackles. and right behind him was Jose Miller with 96 tackles. This team, however, was not very good at getting sacks, with their leader, defensive end David Hartley, only getting 7. But then when you get to interceptions, also, they were not good at getting interceptions. Matter of fact, they only got 10 interceptions this year. That's really bad, with Jose Miller getting the most with 4. So they did have probably the J.J. Watt of this league on the linebacker with Wilson Sharp, but they did not get a lot of sacks, nor did they force any turnovers. So that's pretty problematic. So the highlights, of course, Wilson Sharp. What an incredible linebacker they have. This team was very difficult to beat at home. They were 6-3, and they did a very good job against the opponents they beat there too. That first game of the year when they hosted Tampa, they were down 16-0 only to win 28-16. That was incredible. And if they didn't lose 2 very close games, hosted Phoenix on Sunday night, and then the next week at Los Angeles, they could have been 11-7 with Phoenix and Los Angeles being at 11-7. And since Honolulu in this scenario would have swept Phoenix and swept Omaha, Los Angeles, they would have won the division. So that's incredible. Those 2 games that they lost by just 3 points combined really bit them in the ass. But of course, the bad news is that defense so far is really bad. No sacks, no interceptions. They got to really fix that. Along with fixing that offensive line, they got to get a better running back too. They probably need to get another receiver to complement Eric Fay too. So this team has a lot of work for it, but it could indeed improve. But will it be a playoff team next year? We'll see, I guess. Now up is a team that not only had that is also very lopsided team-wise, but also had a very strong start, but shit the bed the rest of the year. And that is the Portland Dragons. This team started off the season 7-0. It's incredible. A 7-0 start. Their offense was on fire. Their defense was doing a solid job. They looked like the Omaha Thunder in the National West that could possibly compete for the PFA Bowl. Then they lost 2 in a row, hosting Denver. And then that debacle 34-0 shutout loss they took at Phoenix. Then they won 2 in a row to get back at it 9-2. But then they went on to go 1-6 the final part of the season to finish 10-8, which was very disastrous because their final game of the year at Denver, whoever won that game would win the final wild card spot, and they got shit on 38-14 and blew a perfect chance to get into the playoffs. So this team, in terms of scoring, this team is the second best scoring team in the league, scoring slightly under 26 points a game. They had the 7th best offense in terms of yards, the 24th on the ground, so that's not really good, but 4th best in the air, which is fantastic. But then you get to defense, oh boy. 35th in scoring, 38th in yards, 28th on the ground, and 2nd to worst pass defense in the league. Holy shit. No wonder they went 10-8 after that 7-0 start. Frederick Van Dyke, their quarterback, passed for almost 65 completion percentage, thrown for almost 4,600 yards. I think he's second most in the league, not quite sure. 29 touchdowns and 10 picks. Now, of course, considering that how many yards and completion percentage he threw, that's very low amount of touchdowns compared to everyone else, because he did struggle the rest of the way. Matter of fact, I think like the final 4 games, I think he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Their running back, Bruce Morrissey, had over 1,000 rushing yards, but he got 11 touchdowns, so he didn't get a lot of yards, but he did get a lot of touchdowns off it. And right behind him, Manuel Franklin had almost 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, so they didn't get a lot of yards, but this team was running game was very productive in terms of touchdowns. And check this out in terms of receiving. They have 2 receivers that have gotten over 100 receptions. Elmer Vance leads the team with over 1,800 yards, but he only got 7 touchdowns, so that's not really good. But his contemporary, Eris Spencer, had almost 1,700 yards, but he got 10 touchdowns too. So this team has 2 very incredible wide receivers. They have a very solid offensive line. They have 3 100-yard tacklers, with their linebacker Stephen Fowler having 127. Their linebacker Timothy Morero had 113, and their free safety Edwin Hayat had 104 tackles, so this team was pretty good at tackling. However, this team was not very good at sacks. Their linebacker Zachary Wood, having 7 sacks on interceptions, though. Just like that, not really good forced turnovers. But their cornerback Jeremy Anderson had 5 picks, so that's a pretty solid job there. Well, the highlights, of course, going 7-0 and having an incredible offense is a really good start. I'm serious when I think this team could have easily challenged Omaha for the National Conference title to go to PFA Bowl, but then they shit the bed going 3-8 the rest of the way. That offense did not look as good, and that defense really shit the bed, especially when they needed it the most against Denver. That defense is dog shit and needs some major work in the draft. And honestly, I think this team is going to progress next year. That 3-8 start, that 3-8 finish did not look very good at all. That looked like it could actually go into next year too if a sluggish start. Maybe they could be a flip around from next year, have a terrible start, but all of a sudden finish strong. Of course, would that be enough to get a playoff spot? Probably not. But I think this team will regress next year. They probably would have a still good offense, but that defense, that defense has a lot of work to go through. Now we get to one of the wild card teams in the National Conference, and that's the Phoenix Storm, because boy did they blow a big opportunity the last few weeks. This team started off 4-0, and then they lost at home to Honolulu. Then they went on to win 5 in a row with a very strong defense and a solid offense. And at one point they were second in the conference, right behind Omaha for the playoff spot. But then they had that disastrous, and I mean disastrous, stretch where they lost 3 straight at home to terrible offensive performances. They lost 9-0 to Oakland, who only had like 2 wins, I believe, at that point of the year. They then lost to Birmingham 21-10, and then Miami 20-10. That offense couldn't get anything done. That defense was overworked. But then all of a sudden they turned it around to get to 12-4 with the National West all pretty much wrapped up if they just win one more game, and depending on how shit goes, they might even have a first round bye, maybe even home field advantage. But nope, they take that 7-0, undefeated road record, go to Birmingham. They lose in overtime when they had a 17-6 lead going to the fourth quarter. They blew that. And then they go to Los Angeles with the division title on the line, and they shit the bed and let Los Angeles win 24-13, which then required them to go back there again for the wild card game. They had the lead with just a minute remain, I believe, and Los Angeles scored a game-winning touchdown to end their season. Man, talk about snake bitten. Man, what an ugly finish to the year they had. But anyways, on stats, they were 24th in scoring, so around the middle of the pack. They were 26th in terms of yards, so around the middle again. They had the 5th best rushing offense in the league, getting almost 134 yards a game. And then they were 36th in passing offense. Ugh, that's definitely not good for a 12-6 team. But of course, this team's main strength was on defense. They were the 4th best scorer in defense, the 5th best in terms of yards allowed, the 10th best against the run, and the 10th best against the pass. So across the board, very strong defense. Their quarterback, James Cruz, had thrown for over 3,400 yards, so not a lot of yards, but he completed 62%. That's only solid. But he did get 21 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, so he didn't turn over the ball that much. But then their running back, Dave Sexton, had over 1,800 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. He helped that team a lot on offense. And their lack of passing showed up in the receiving corps too. Juan Langley, their leading receiver, had exactly 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. And right behind him was Craig McCaskill, who had almost 100 receptions, but only almost 950 yards and 4 touchdowns. Another solid offensive line. They have another stud at linebacker, Adam Hernandez, who had 136 tackles plus 4 sacks. And right behind him was Frank John, their strong safety, with 113 tackles and 7 sacks. That's incredible that a safety got that many sacks. But their leading sacker was Aaron Stokes, their other linebacker, who had 13 sacks plus a pick too. So he had a very great year. Not a lot of interceptions, but 3 players got 3 picks or more, with Robert Farr, their cornerback, leading the team with 5 picks. You know, it's really unbelievable that this team played much better on the road than they did at home. Their scoring was much better on the road and shit. That's still incredible. 7-2 on the road, 5-4 at home. That's one lowlight and a highlight at the same time. But man, those lowlights, that 3-game losing streak, that really, really, really cost them. But of course, the even bigger loss was losing those final 2 games. If they won just one of those games, they would have won the National East. I mean the National West. And if they beat Birmingham, they could have they would have won the third seed. And if they beat all 3 of, Birmingham and Los Angeles, they might, not only would they have the third seed, they might have had home first round bye. And depending on what happened with Omaha, if they lost their game, they might have had home field advantage for all we know. But we'll never know. And that was a disappointing ending to the year when they were 12-4. They had everything all wrapped up going good for them, and they blew it. So I don't think they're going to collapse, but I think they're not going to do good next year unless they get that offense fixed immediately. Well, now we get to the division winner and the final team for the National Conference, and that's the Los Angeles Angels. I predicted before the year that they were going to win the division, but they were not going to look good at all, because this division going into the year was the worst on paper. The Los Angeles Angels were the best team on paper, but they were ranked the 20th best team in the league. Think about that. You're the best team in your division, and you're just barely in the top half? That's not really good. And they definitely did not look good at all to start the year, like I predicted. They start off 1-3, including losing to Oakland in Week 5. That's horrendously bad. But then, all of a sudden, thanks to that strong swarming defense, they turned it around to win, I think it was 8 in a row. And that might be, I think it's the second longest win streak in National Conference history, right behind Omaha's 14-0 start. But then they got that disastrous Monday night loss at Honolulu, but they turned it around to get to 11-6, and they had to beat Phoenix in the final week to clinch a wild card spot and the National West title. And they did beat them, and then they hosted the next week, and they did a massive come-from-behind victory with a minute left to win it, and then they went to Omaha and almost pulled off the upset against them. They only lost 34-31, and they had the lead, I think, for the majority of the game. So overall, they had a really good year to end the season. Stat-wise, however, they were all over the place. On offense, they were 17th in scoring, so average. They were 14th best in yards, so pretty okay. 14th on the ground and 16th in the air. So pretty solid amount of yards, but not really a lot of points off of it. But then you get the defense. They had the 12th best scoring defense. They allowed the 27th most yards allowed, though. So they had a bend but don't break defense. Let them get a lot of yards, but don't let them get any points off of it. They had the 12th best defense on the ground, but 30th against the pass, which is not really good at all for a playoff team. Their quarterback, Maurice Green, barely completed 58% of his passes, so he did not really have a good year. But he did pass for exactly 4,150 yards, 24 touchdowns, but 12 picks. So he did throw a good amount of touchdowns, but a little too many interceptions, and that completion percentage is god-awful. Their first ever pick, their running back, John Fox, rushed for just 12 attempts short of 400. He was a workhorse this year. He rushed for over 1,900 yards, oh my god, and 16 touchdowns. He was single-handedly the best offensive player on this team. He really helped this team a lot. But surprisingly, they also had 2 very good studs and receivers. William Stewart led the team with over 1,650 yards, and he got 12 touchdowns too, so a very good year for him. And right behind him was Leo Dennis, who had over 1,200 yards, but only 8 touchdowns. Their offensive line was solid, although it did suffer some injuries throughout the year, so that probably really hurt their stats. Los Angeles has one of the strongest linebacking cores in the league, with their leader Julius Searcy having 162 tackles plus 2 sacks and 5 interceptions. That's incredible. And right behind him was Daniel Stewart, their safety, with 6 sacks and 111 tackles, so another really strong safety. And right behind him, their other linebacker, Herman Montes, with 101 tackles and 3 sacks. This team has one strong hell of a 4-3 defense. But they didn't get a lot of sacks, though. John Nolan, their defensive end, leads the team with 9 sacks. And not a lot of interceptions either, which is incredible. That's probably why they struggle throughout the year, with John Searcy leading the team with 5 interceptions, which is incredible that their linebacker leads it. So this team had that 8-game winning streak, which is incredible. I think, like I said, it's the longest in team history, but I also think it's the second longest in National Conference history. And I think overall, that's the 3rd longest win streak in PFA history behind... No, it was the... I think it's the 4th longest behind Chicago's 9-0 start, and then Omaha's 14-game start. And then they had that incredible, I think it was the highest scoring game ever, that 41-39 come from behind victory they had against Portland. That was incredible. Beating Phoenix the final week of the year to clinch the playoff spot in the National West, and then beat them the next week and almost knocking off Omaha. That was a really good start to the year. But that 1-3 start really hurt them, suffering couple disastrous losses, including their only home loss of the year against Indianapolis, where they got boat raced by them. That was pretty bad because they went almost undefeated at home until that happened. So what could this team do to fix up next year? They got to fix up that offensive line a bit. Maurice Green needs to get better in terms of passing. You can't have a 58% completion percentage for any longer. And they need to get better in terms of pressure defense. They got to get more sacks and interceptions. But judging the talent of this division, I think Los Angeles is going to be a contender for each year for the next bunch of years. Because Oakland's far behind still. Honolulu is like mediocre. Portland, I think, is going to regress. And the only competition would probably be Phoenix with that incredible defense. So I can't wait to see what happens. This could be a big rivalry in the National West. And maybe in the National Conference. And with that, I am finally done talking about the National Conference. And tune in next time as I begin talking about the Century Conference. And I can't wait to talk about that division. It's the best division in the league. So see you then.